Hello YouTube. This video is about the rust in this panel. We have a pinhole right there and a pinhole right there. And we're going to attempt something I've never done before. We're going to make a patch panel that essentially covers that area to take care of that rust. Now that doesn't look terrible bad, but the other side is much worse. So I'm going to attempt the driver's side first so that I have a little practice before I attempt this one. What we have to do is look at what we're going to fix. And the outside panel is not very complicated, but if we look underneath, we see that that outside panel is laid on top of the trunk floor. Now that trunk floor looks like it's in fairly good condition, so what I'd like to do is try to separate the outside panel from that trunk panel and not have to replace the trunk panel. Let's take a look inside the trunk. Here we can see that the outside panel is sitting on top of the trunk panel, and I have hopes of separating the two. First thing we need to do is to get rid of this paint. This is what we have now, and we've got a pinhole here that we didn't identify. We can see that it's weak right through here. So it's a good thing we're going to run the patch up, around, and down. Underneath, it looks pretty solid. There are some rust holes, but I hope I can separate it. That's the plan. Some of the videos that I saw on YouTube cut out the piece first and then trace a pattern against it. I'm going to make the pattern first and then cut it out. I don't know which way is better, but that seems like the way to do it. So this has to be 13 inches long, and if we hook the ruler on the back side of the panel underneath, we want to be 3 inches tall. So I need a piece 13 by 3. I decided to make our pattern 14 by 3 rather than the 13 by 3 to give me a little bit more room at the edge where those pinholes are, because that metal is probably rotten. So let's make it 14 by 3. 14, 3. All right, and we'll cut that out. Let's go see. So here's our pattern. What we need is a bend at the bottom now, and we can see, even with this piece of paper, that this trunk has a curve to it. So we're going to have to take care of that also. But first, let's put the 90-degree bend in here. And it wants to be 7/8 of an inch deep. So let's go do that. So I marked it 7/8 of an inch deep, and we'll bend that. And now we'll go see what it fits like. We have a nice 90 on our pattern now, and if we put that up here, we can see that this edge and this edge is proud, and that's again because there's curvature to the trunk. So we got to take care of that, and the way we take care of that is we want to shrink this edge a little bit so that it will curve like this. This is a shrinker. And what it does is it grabs the metal and pulls it together, causing it to bend like this. We don't need much of a bend, and it's mostly in the center. So we put this thing in the shrinker because we want it to bend. And we're not going to do too much because we don't need too much, and it's paper. And I don't really know how it's going to work. I see it is working though. We got way too much bend. That doesn't look too bad. It fits pretty good. We just want to make sure that we're covering up all the holes. We want to come this way a little bit. And let's tape it up. And now we'll trace the outline. There's the outline of the pattern. But I think what I'm going to do is cut the piece of metal first. We'll trace our pattern out on a piece of metal. This happens to be 18 gauge. And we'll go cut it out. And here we go. And now we have our panel. We'll take the sharp burrs off the edge. We'll mark off 7/8 of an inch, because that's where we want our bend to be. Let's go put our bend in. We'll take our piece and put it in the brake and carefully line up our line. As the brake comes down, it moves back a little bit, so you gotta adjust it as you go. And here we go with our 90-degree bend. There we go. We got 90 degrees there. And here we test fit our piece. And we're a little short. I forgot to accommodate for the distance in the bend, but it's not going to hurt us. All the rust is below that line. So we're okay that way, just by luck. But we can see that the piece doesn't fit this way because of the curvature in the body. So we need to shrink this area right here. I'm just going to put a gentle shrink in here to see how it goes. There's one. I'm going to slide it over an inch. 2, slide it over another inch. 3, slide it over another inch. 4, and let's see how that fits. We now have a gentle bend in this. I don't know if you can see it on the camera or not. Well, let's see how it fits the body. I think we have to go just a little bit more. In this corner, the car is sloping in, so we're going to have to bend this corner in a little bit. But I think maybe one more shrink, and I think I'm going to put it right there. Yeah, that fits much better. Now we got to get this corner to go in a little bit. We'll use the vise and just put a little bend in there. And we'll go check that out. After tweaking it a little bit, I think we've got a good fit. There's no gap on either end. The top is nice and tight. This bends in with the car. I think the next thing we do is we erase this line and we draw another line. Okay, with our patch panel in place and clamped, we can trace the outline. Now comes the moment when I hope I know what I'm doing. What we're going to do is cut on the inside of the line because we traced it on the outside of our pattern. So we want to leave the line. And if we have too much body left off and we have to grind a little bit off, that's good. Let's bend this out a little bit. I don't know why particularly. I've decided that The best way to go here is to remove this piece, cut it off, but leave it attached to the trunk floor, and then that'll be exposed and we'll do what we have to do. Hopefully I can find the rivets and drill the rivets out and save this metal. I may have to take an air chisel to it, but for now let's just cut this out. I really didn't want to do this, but I can't find any rivets at all underneath. So we're going to try the air chisel gently to see if we can identify where the rivets are. Wow, look at that. Boy, you couldn't ask for better than that. All right, let's clean this up. This tool scares me, but I got no choice. It's the only way it's going to reach in there. Our patch panel is fitting pretty nice. It's good for here, but it's a little tall, and this piece from the trunk is going to have to be held up when we weld it, because we don't want it visible. So this is the outline of our patch panel. So I have to take that much off. We're going to grind up to the line. We'll use a die grinder to get right into the corners. We're going to straighten out this trunk floor pan a little bit. We try our piece. That's looking pretty good. I like it. All right, let's clamp it in place. Well guys, I did turn the camera on so that you could watch me spot weld this thing on with the clamps in place so that the metal is even with the trunk bar. But what I have to do now is the bottom of this thing is in a little bit on both sides. So I want to pry it out a little bit and then put a tack on that. The reason I'm trying this out rather than put a clamp on it is I can't get a clamp on in here because of the trunk floor. So we're going to have to just a little bit. And we'll put a tack right there. Okay, you get the idea. What I have to do is go all the way around this thing and spot weld all the way around, and then we'll grind off, and I'll bring you back to that. And now we're going to tack the trunk floor to our patch. Well, there's nothing for it now. We got to do some grinding. What you're supposed to do is grind the weld, not the metal, because theoretically the two metals are even. If you remove the weld, then the two metals should be even. So here we go. Well guys, here's what happened. When I went to finish grind, I hit some punky metal, and when I tried to weld it up, it just made a big hole. So rather than try to patch that hole, I cut the old patch out and put in a new patch. And I've ground it down, and this is the stage we're at. And the stage we're at is looking for pinholes. And what I mean by looking for pinholes is, if you turn a bright light on in back of the welds, you can see pinholes right there, right there, right there. And we'll put a little tack on top of that and grind it down. Now this is where I was the last time, and I had a great big hole. The hole is over here. So hopefully I don't have the same thing happen here. And I'm doing this without a helmet, but I'm closing my eyes before I do the tack. So we got one right there. 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 Missed. Okay, got one right there. See what happens? You get a big hole. And that's what you end up with. This metal over here is punky. It's not the patch. The patch ends over here. It's this metal in the car that's punky. We have the pinholes taken care of, but I made another error. I welded too quickly, and there's some warpage in here. And you can't see it, but you can feel it. So let's try to get some of it out. Well, it's not perfect, but it's a lot better than it was. This time, I'm going to cut the hole out and then make the pattern from the hole. Last time, we made the pattern and cut the hole from the pattern. And I think I'm going to try it the other way this time. I'd really like to keep this patch below these two holes, because that's for the license plate light. I don't intend to put a license plate on here, but the extrusion, what they've built out for the license plate light is kind of cool looking. So I want to put those back on. On this side, I already filled the hole. If I go an inch wide, it covers the hole, but the metal in back here is too punky. I'll never be able to weld to it. So if I go this wide, I'm still below the hole, and it gets me into better metal. Now I expect this side is going to be tougher than the other side. All right, nothing for it but to do it. Let's mark it out. Big patch. I think we only have to go to here. This feels like good metal here. So we'll cut it here. Now on this side, we have to go further. Now I do believe we can make that all in one piece. It's just gentle bends. The bend up from the bottom is the same. This bend is the same. It's just this curves down and then it curves back out. And we can do that with a shrinker stretcher. So now we're going to mark the rest of this out. And how far do we got to go here? Oh boy. we'll try here. There it is. This will be my second body patch. It's a pretty big body patch, but I think it can be done in one. I don't know if I can do it, but I think I can. I'm going to use a little bit bigger cutoff wheel because of the size of the patch, but it's the same thing. Now we'll do the same thing we did with the other one. We'll bend it down and then separate it from the trunk pan. Well, I guess that didn't take much, did it? How about that? Didn't even have to chisel. That's pretty solid. That's really solid. This will take their skin right down to the bone if you happen to get in contact with it. We know that this lip is 7/8 of an inch deep from the last panel we made. So we need 7/8 of an inch of a lip. If we measure this way, and we want the board bigger than the hole so we can mark the hole, if we make it 4.5 inches, that gives us plenty of height. And if we make it 25 inches long, that gives us plenty of length. We have the pattern board made up with bend, and what we're going to do is put it inside here, but it doesn't fit right now because of the bends. So what we have to do is put the bends on this. And the way I can do that is I can hold this up and it's straight, and I can see where it's not touching, mark it accordingly so it's right here. This needs to be stretched, and then more to here. So this is a curve that goes like that. And then this right here, from here to here is pretty straight. But over here, we need to shrink it so it bends it back on itself. So that's what I've got marked out. We need to bend it that way. We need to bend it that way. This is flat. I've made up my pattern board, and I've learned a new thing. You cannot stretch a piece of paper. You can shrink it, but you can't stretch it. But that's okay, it's close enough. We can put it in here. We're going to work this end, and we'll work this end. We'll cut on the outside of the line because we'd rather trim it down than be too short. Yep, see, I made it too short. I knew it as soon as I cut that line, I knew I cut it on the wrong side of the line and it's too short. But you know what? It's not a catastrophe. We just put some tape on the end there and extend the length of it. We have it taped in place and we can draw the upper line. Now, the advantage of this railroad board is that you can pull tape off of it if you're careful. Well, the pattern keeps the form pretty good without even the tape on it. That's good. Now we need a piece of metal like that. We have a pretty wide gap here, so we're going to have to lay a couple spots in the same spot in order to make the gap. This is about where I was when I stopped videotaping the first patch. I didn't have problems with grinding through. I had problems when I was trying to fill the pinholes. I'd hit the pinhole and the body metal would just burn away. So we're to the grinding now. And now we'll go at it with the die grinder so that we stay real small and we don't wander into the original body. This is where I was the last time when I burned a big hole in the body. We're looking for pinholes, so we got the light on in back of the panel. And we're looking for light to come through, and we're also looking for any little divots that need to be filled as we go along. So I got holes right there and right there. They just burned through. I don't know why. You know, very, very light grinding on this side. It's not like I made the metal too thin. It's just that there must have been a little rust pocket right there in that spot. I think I've taken this as far as I can take it. The end here and this end is even. There is a little bump here. If I was a body man, I'd be able to dolly that out, I think. I can't get to the back side of it because the floor of the car is above the seam here, so I can't get a direct hit at it. I think I'm just going to leave it alone for now, and I'll have to fill it with Bondo, that's all. I mean, we're talking a little bit. I think it's time to strip some paint. Okay, let's tape something off here a little bit. We'll wipe it down with some paint thinner, make sure it's nice and clean. I know I'm only using spray cans, but you know, do the best you can. This is self-etching primer. It's the same primer I used on the firewall. I like the way it went on. Here we go. There we go. I'll let it dry and I'll put another coat on, but no more rust holes. The directions on the can says to recoat within 2 minutes. So here's our second coat. There we go with the second coat. No runs, no drips, no errors. I like this paint. Let's take the paper off. Well, it looks pretty good. But anything in a flat paint will look good. It doesn't show all the bumps. And I can feel some. It's not perfect, but it's not far off. You know, just a little bit of Bondo will fix that. And for my first 2 patches, I'm happy with it. If you enjoyed this video, there'll be more.